Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as you can see that today we are going to talk about the directive principles of state policy. Okay. And these are famously known as the DPSP. Alright. So if we talk about the topics that we have arranged for the discussion under this particular series of the directive principles of the state policy, then basically these are the topics like the introduction, the features of the directive principles, the classification of the directive principles, new directive principles, connection behind directive principles, criticism of directive principles, utility of directive principles, conflict between the fundamental rights and the directive principles, distinction between the fundamental rights and the directive principles, implementation of directive principles, directives outside part 4th, and the articles related to the directive principles of state policy at a glance. Alright, so these are the topics that we will cover in this particular series. So let's start with the introduction part. So basically, if we talk about the basic introduction, so the directive principle of the state policy are basically enumerated in the part 4 of the Constitution. Okay, and if we talk about the articles, so article 36 to article 51 contains in the part 4 under the heading of directive principles of the state policy. All right, so this is, you can say, a very necessary and the most basic information that you are required to keep in your mind before go ahead. So the framers of the Constitution basically borrowed this idea from the Irish Constitution of 1937, which had copied it from the Spanish Constitution. So here we had drawn some conclusion from it. Like first, it is borrowed provision. Okay, that is the first thing, that it is borrowed provision. Thereafter, if we talk about another thing, so basically this is the timeline. The Spanish Constitution, Irish Constitution, Indian Constitution. Okay, so this is the timeline. From Spanish, it went to Irish. From Irish, we had borrowed it. All right, so please remember this pathway or the timeline, whatever you want to say, you can call it. All right. Second thing is that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was also the framer of the Constitution, drafter of the Constitution, okay, he described these principles as the novel features of the Indian Constitution. So here you can draw a question, okay, like the question could be drawn in two ways. The first way is that who among the following was the person who called the DPSP as the noble features? All right, and your options will be like this: G.V. Malvankar, Sardar Patel, and B.R. Ambedkar. Okay, so we know that the B.R. Ambedkar is the right answer. All right, and if we twist the question could be like this: B.R. Ambedkar called which of the following as the noble feature of the Constitution? And these will be your option, or the options will be like this: fundamental rights, okay, thereafter DPSP, thereafter fundamental duties. All right, this could be like this. So we know the answer is DPSP. All right, or the directive principle of state policy. So basically, these principles, along with the fundamental rights, contain the philosophy of the Constitution, and it is the soul of the Constitution. So why we are calling this and why we are saying this? So if we try to connect the dots here, so we can say, like when we talk about India, so we know that India is the world's largest democracy, right? Okay. And if we talk about the USA, so what is the significance of USA or the United States of America? It is world's first democracy. Okay. Okay. So just remember these two things. All right. So if we talk about India, like I have told you, it is world's largest democracy, and the democracy of India works on the Constitution of India. All right. And if we talk about the Constitution, so the Constitution promised the democracy in the three forms. Political democracy. Okay. Social democracy. All right. And then comes the economic democracy. All right. So in these three forms, the Constitution of India promised a democracy to the Indian citizens. All right. And if we talk about the first one, political democracy. So this is basically given by the fundamental rights. And if we call about the social democracy and the economic democracy, then these are basically given by the directive principles of state policy. Okay. So these are these two things. Okay. Fundamental rights and this one. So that's why it is said that basically the DPSP along with the fundamental rights are basically frames the soul of the Indian Constitution. Okay. And that's why there was a person whose name was Granville Austin. He described the principles and the fundamental rights as the conscience of the Constitution. As the conscience of the Constitution. Got it? After this, another thing that we could see here is that the phrase directive principles of the state policy denotes that the ideals that the state should keep in mind while formulating policies and elected laws. All right. It means that they are the ways through which the government could ensure the social and the economic democracy and growth for the citizen. So these are the constitutional instructions or the recommendations to the state in the legislative and the administrative matters. And if we talk about the Article 36, which is the first article of the heading of DPSP, the term state in the part 4th has the meaning same as in the part 3. All right. So basically, if we talk about it, so let me tell you one thing very clearly. When we talk about the part 4th and then we talk about the part 3. Okay. If we talk about both of them, always remember the one thing Part 4th describes the directive principles of state policy. Okay. And part 3 describes the fundamental rights. All right. And we know that they both are important for the sake of democracy. All right. So there is the meaning of state. Okay. And whenever we listen the word state, the first thing which comes in our mind is the form of provinces. Like you can say state. If I talk about state with you, then you will say that Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Haryana, these are the states. All right. But in the language of polity, the states having the different meaning. All right. It means that the state instead of provinces here denotes the governing bodies. Okay. So whenever we will come across this word state, so please do not let yourself to think about the provinces about which we were talking just a minute ago. All right, these are the governing bodies which govern these countries, whether at the central level, state level, local level, or any affiliation level through some agreements and all. All right, so basically the state have been defined both like in part 4th and the part 3 as well. All right, so the meaning of state is same. Okay, the meaning is not differs. So keep this thing in your mind. Therefore, it includes the legislative and the executive organs of the central and the state government and all local authorities and all other public authorities in the country which having the relation with the governing authorities. Okay, if any particular organization having the relation with the governing authorities, ultimately that will be the part of the states. All right. So the directive principles resembles the instrument of instructions, okay, which are enumerated in the Government of India Act 1935. Okay, remember the one thing, as I had told you already in the previous lectures also, that however we had brought provisions, okay, from the various constitution across the world. But remember, we do not copy paste them as it is, okay, because the conditions are different there and the conditions are different in our country. All right, we had just taken the idea, but then what we did, that we modified the provisions. Okay, in accordance with the need of our country. So same thing applies here also. Like if we talk about the directive principles, we had discussed that it is you can say a broad provision and we had taken it from the Irish constitution. All right, but then what we did, we resembled it with the instrument of restrictions which were enumerated in the Government of India Act 1935. So these provisions could be modified up to the extent that we required in the country. Okay, in the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the directive principles are like the instrument of instructions which were issued to the Governor Generals and the governors of the colonies of India by the British government under the Government of India 1935. Okay, what is called directive principles are merely another name for the instrument of instructions. The only difference is that the instructions to the legislature and the executive, while the DPSP is denotes the ideals, they are not instructions. Okay, thereafter the directive principles constitute a very comprehensive economic, social, and up to some extent the political program. Why I'm saying some extent? Because I had already told you that there are two main provisions. The first is the directive principles of state policy. Okay, and thereafter the fundamental rights. And here I am just reminding you, please keep this thing in your mind and do not get yourself confused, that the directive principle of state policy basically provides for the social democracy and the economic democracy. Okay, so these two provisions are fully satisfied, but the fundamental rights are the main ones which provides a political democracy against the arbitrary powers of the states. All right, so that's why it is not fully, it is up to some extent only. Okay, for a modern democratic state, the aim at realizing the high ideals of the justice, liberty, equality, and the fraternity as outlined in the preamble to the Constitution. Okay, so remember, whenever we talk about the preamble of Constitution, okay, remember one thing here, like preamble is some kind of summary of the Constitution, like whatever things we had presented in the Constitution. Okay, and basically preamble contains several things. Like if we talk about the preamble, so preamble first describe the nation as sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. What is this? That is the nature of the state. It means that how's the country we had made. Second thing is the aspirations. Aspirations of the nation, like what we want to be in the future. So it is for the, like we want to ensure the justice, we want to ensure the equality, okay, we want to ensure the fraternity, okay, and all. So basically the DPSP are the one which helps the state to fulfill these aspirations that we had aspired while the formulation of the Constitution. All right, so these are the things. Okay, they embody the concept of welfare state and not the police state. Okay, like if we only promise the political democracy, okay, so the arbitrary powers of the state would be under control. But what about the social development and the economic development of the individuals that are living in this country, what we call as in citizens? All right, so that's why there was a need to shift it, the police state with the welfare state. Okay, so along with the political democracy, we also promise the social and the economic democracy. Okay, and if we talk about the policing state, so it existed during the colonial era. In brief, they seek to establish economic and social democracy in the country. All right, and why it is written down that it was available in the colonial era? Because we know that the Britishers having the hard and fast rules. Okay, and these hard and fast rules were of the non-social and economic political democratic natures. All right, they were not in the favor of this. So the directive principles are not justifiable in nature. Please remember this. Okay, and they are not legally enforceable by the court for their violation. All right, it means that the DPSP, if someone thinks that his or her you can say rights and his or her social and economical development hampered because the government not fulfilling the duties under the DPSP. So the person could not move to the court as the person could move in the court while having the relation with the fundamental rights. Why? Because the fundamental rights are justificable and enforceable in the court. But if we talk about the directive principle of the state policy, remember one thing clearly, that these are non-justificable and not enforceable. Okay, so therefore the government, central level, state level or local level, cannot be compelled to implement them. It means that they could not be forced to make the policy over these principles. Nevertheless, the Constitution, Article 37 itself says that these principles are fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of state to apply these principles while making the laws. So we can say that legally they are not enforceable in courts, but they are backed by the constitutional force under Article 37 of the Indian Constitution. All right. The directive principles, though non-justificable in nature, help the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of a law. It means that they could be used for judicial review. Okay. The Supreme Court has ruled many a times that in determining the constitutionality of any law, if a court finds that the law in question seeks to give effect to the directive principles, it may consider such a law to be reasonable in relation to the Article 14, equality before law, or Article 19, in which the 6 freedoms have been promised, and thus save such law from unconstitutionality. Okay. After this, if we move forward, so here is the classification of directive principles of state policy, right? These are the things. So in the beginning we had discussed that there are total articles from Article 36 to Article 51, okay, in the DPSP. And we had already discussed the Article 36 and Article 37. Article 36 stands for the meaning of state, and 37 stands for the constitutional force. Okay, and rest of the articles which are left, these articles are basically divided in 3 headings. Okay, and you can say that the remaining principles are basically divided in 3 headings. And what are these headings? First is the socialistic principles. After this, Gandhian principles. After this, liberal intellectual principles. All right. So that is the division of directive principle of state policy. Socialistic, Gandhian, liberal intellectual principles. All right. So let's have a talk on the socialistic principles. But before this, let me tell you one thing, that if we talk about the constitution, so constitution does not provide for any classification of the directive principles. Okay. But on the basis of their content and the directions, we had classified into socialistic, Gandhian, and the liberal intellectual principles. All right. So these principles reflect the ideology of socialism. They lay down the framework of democratic socialist state aimed at providing the social and economic justice and set path towards the welfare state. So that's why they are known as the socialistic principles. So the first principle here is to promote the welfare of the people by securing a social order permitted by the justice, social, economic, and the political, and to minimize the inequalities in the status, income, facilities, and opportunities, as per the Article 38. All right. Thereafter, there is an Article 39. Okay. And these are the part of it: 39A, B, C, D, E, and F. If we talk about the first one, 39A, it's a right to the adequate means of livelihood for all citizens. If we talk about 39B, the equitable distribution of material resources of the community for common good. If we talk about 39C, prevention of concentration of wealth and the means of production. If we talk about 39D, equal pay for equal work for men and women. If we talk about 39E, preservation of the health and the strength of workers and children against the forcible abuse. And if we talk about the last one, is the opportunities for healthy development of the child. Okay, so these are the subheadings and the subparts of the main article, Article 39, and denoted by 39A, B, C, D, E, F. Remember this. After this, to promote equal justice and to provide free legal aid to the poor, 39A, but capital A. Remember, okay, this is the difference. Thereafter, to secure the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, sickness, and the disablement under Article 41. To make provision for just and the human conditions of work and the maternity relief under Article 42. To secure a living wage, a decent standard of life, and the social and the cultural opportunities for all workers, Article 43. Thereafter, to take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of industries, Article 43A, and to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living of people and to improve the public health under Article 47. Okay, so that's the thing. So students, basically in this lecture we have covered till here. In the next lecture we will start from here. Till then, just revise the facts and figures that alsoever we have discussed in this lecture and be ready for the another lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture and thank you.